I'm going to go straight to Ms Benham.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I may see you at the Swan Hill races if that's where you plan to be this long weekend. And perhaps next year one of those photos could be some new stables at the Mildura Harness Racing Club. Speaking of harness racing, Minister, on budget paper 3, page 157, refers to the sustainable racing sector. You and I are both very well aware of the challenges within harness racing Victoria. Can you give a guarantee the government will ensure that harness racing continues into perpetuity in Victoria?
Forever, Ms Benham. Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
Yes, well, I'd like to be able to give that guarantee, and I absolutely can guarantee that we'll continue as a government to support harness racing here in Victoria. So in the past 7 years, there's been a $115 million contribution from our government to support the solvency and the progression at harness racing Victoria. What's really important to understand at HRV, and our clubs know this, and I've met with you, in fact, with the Mildura Club, that there needs to be some right sizing of the industry. We need to make sure that there's a lot of kicking the can down the road at harness racing. A very significant investment's been made by our government. We'll continue to do that. We're working with Bernard Saundry, the board chair, and the committee to make sure that we continue to support harness racing. But that means some changes. They've got to work within the budget that's provided to them. They are a government statutory body. But I'm confident, Ms Benham, that the ongoing investment from our government, we're very committed to the long-term viability and future of harness racing across the state, but that's going to also involve some changes to the way things are operating in terms of race dates, around race meetings, and also around the EFT at HRV, and we're making those changes, and that's all about supporting participants so that we have a sustainable HRV and a sustainable harness racing in Victoria. The last point I'd make is it contributes some 4,500 jobs of $600 million a year to the Victorian economy. That's not something to take lightly, particularly around regional Victoria. And those jobs and that economic activity drive so much of our rural economies in particular, not just at Melton. So it's important that we back harness racing, and the government certainly does that.
I could not agree more. If we're talking, so when we talk about the changes to the race meet calendar, HRV have proposed severe cuts to some meets around the state. Do you support cuts of that severity?
What I think is important is there's a couple of elements to that. There are some reductions in some of our race meeting numbers for HRV, but I think that's also about making sure that we want to have race field sizes that work effectively and that are of a reasonable number. That's critical because it generates wagering turnover, and that then generates revenue. So too many meetings, not enough participants, not enough runners in our fields, that harms wagering, that harms revenue. But also there's another element, which is making sure that our participants, we've got to coordinate. We don't want to run them all over the state from Mildura across to Bendigo and the like. We want to make sure they've got an opportunity to make sure that the calendar is right-sized in terms of field sizes and generating income, but also that we're mindful when we're asking people to race in the evenings here and then across other parts of the state, that we look after participant welfare. That's another element. But I think you and I have also, through the Mildura Club, I think there's been some changes to make sure that in terms of race meeting times and the like, that we're a little more sensible about the programming of race meeting dates that reflect what are largely volunteer committees that do a great job. So I think there's still race dates to come out, but I think there will be some changes in meeting number, but I think that's really driving participant welfare, income and revenue generation, and integrity in the sport, and then also making sure in some instances where we're testing that with clubs, that we respond and understand the feedback. And I think we've seen some examples, hopefully, where we're trying to find the right balance in Mildura, for example.
Like no more summer harness racing in Mildura would be handy, but those
you've gone exactly to the common sense point that did seem a bit odd, that I know new team there with Bernard have been able to address thanks to some work from the club.
So you support reductions in the race meet calendar then?
No, well, the race meeting calendar is determined by HRV. What I support is a sustainable harness racing industry that backs our participants. And we're not, if the determination of HRV in its discussion with participants is was no good having race field sizes that reduce, revenue reduces, integrity issues can arise, and then there's not revenue. So we've got to be smart about not running our participants ragged, having an economic focus and a quality race program focus. That's the task for HRV. I believe they're doing that effectively. And if we don't have some change where we're not responding to the fact that making this a sustainable industry for the long term needs everyone to play their role. And I think some recasting is important to right size and then bounce back out. And I think that that's the work that we're trying to do, and very committed to making sure that there's plenty of harness racing out there, but that it also responds to the needs of the industry, the participants, and
Great.
revenue.
Thank you, Minister. What are you doing to address the increasing incidence of major protests, which you'd be well of, and the confrontations before we end up having some sort of inevitable major serious incident?
We did do some work in Parliament about some changes to in the Racing Act to make sure that we could pursue those who seek to disrupt race meetings, because and also on what is on racetracks. That work's been supported across the board from both your party and others to make sure that we were able to provide a level. It's fine if people want to protest, but people
Is that the buffer zones that you're talking about?
some of that's right. But what we also need to understand is the safety of our animals as much as the safety of our jockeys, but also other racing staff is critical, and we can't have people...
And people that plan to go to the races who are feeling unsafe, are there plans for that?
Absolutely. Well, I know that our clubs work closely with Victoria Police to make sure that I was at Warrnambool for our Jumps Carnival recently, which generates some $15 million in economic activity, 30,000 people there across the 3 days. And it's a small minority of people who want to protest. They can do that if they like, but not at the expense of those who want to have it as the tagline for country racing, it's a great day out. And the numbers that I've reflected here, when you've got 35,000 people employed in racing and it's generating billions of dollars of economic activity, and it is a great day out, and people should be able to do that free from being hassled, but also not having activities that occur that can also put danger in the way of both our jockeys, racing staff and our animals. And we've also seen where people have tried to do that at Melbourne Cup at Flemington in the past to try and damage the track, and it's not acceptable.
Thank you, Minister.